Happy politics, and welcome to what I know is your favorite BC politics podcast / and or YouTube show. This is BC Poly Hot Stove. My name is McLean Kay. I'm the editor-in-chief of The Orca, and I'm joined in a socially distant manner by...
Jordan Bateman, VP Communications, the Independent Contractors and Businesses Association.
The first thing we're going to talk about this week is, the legislature's back in session, and I would ordinarily be there, but for two things. First is you might be able to hear the barest sounds of a sniffle in my voice, for which I apologize. And I did not want people to be treating me like I was radioactive, so I thought discretion's a better part of valor there. And the second part is I wasn't really clear if we were welcome or not. We had those of us in the press gallery had heard from our press gallery president who'd been talking with the government, and they made it clear that we could go back, but we've heard that a few times, and through no fault of anyone's. But I sort of thought that it was, they're still set up for people to work from home, so maybe that's what they want us to do. But it sounds like almost everyone's there, and hopefully in the next couple days, when this sounds a little more normal, I'll be there too.
First of all, I think you've misspoken. You didn't want them treating you more radioactive than usual.
Accurate.
And then, second of all, I do have a little bone to pick with Rob Shaw's piece on the Orca, where it was a little bit of hand-wringing about, maybe they shouldn't be going back. A lot of the real world has been going back. Our office is full. Many offices are. I just don't think in good conscience. The perception if, the House leaders said, no, we're going to still stay socially distant and do things via Zoom, but hey, you kids, go to school every day, K to 12, no problems. That would be politically untenable. So, no, politicians are back to work. They're all double vaxxed. They're fine. It's fine. So,
from the journalist's point of view, it's weird because it's still somewhat hybrid in that, yes, the MLAs are all there sitting shoulder to shoulder, and you're right, they're all double vaxxed. But for things like, there's no more hallway scrums. Those just don't exist anymore. And so there's not much point in going in other than being able to sit and watch question period, which I miss. But it's not like we can go down and, pounce on, I don't know, Mike Farnworth after question period, which is just a hypothetical example. That is still strongly discouraged. You still have to send in a request, and it's all done via phones, which is fine. But again, for those of us...
You think Clem Chappell would be waiting for an invitation? He would just go down there. No, look, if you need a clip and you need a minister, just go. What are they going to do? Sergeant Arm's going to grab you and turf you out of the building? Great, you're a reporter who got thrown out of the building for trying to do an interview.
That's true.
Come on. It's time. You're all masked. I noticed in the House it looks like they have plexiglass up on both sides of the House.
They did before. 2.5
sword lengths and 2 plexiglasses apart. So it gives that kind of feeling like, they're in a hockey game now. Like, get your elbows up, you can slam against the glass. I like that. I like that, very Canadian. But no, honestly, everyone in that building, I believe, has to show a passport that you're vaxxed, right?
Yes. You need to be double vaxxed to enter. You need to have and show the card rather. So, yes.
So, either we stand up and say, look, vaccinations work and are the path back to real life as we knew it, or we're lying to people about what vaccination is really about. So, as the government, as public health officers, they should be taking the lead at showing that you can have a normal functioning work building as long as everyone's double vaxxed. They should be patterning that, and I'm glad they are.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's the legislature in many respects was way behind. Lots of workplaces have been back at full strength, including infamously schools, which we can talk about later. But we wanted to start with session. I'll also touch on something else I'm going to use the air quotes here, missed yesterday, and that was the big protest blocking the entrances of the legislature. And the pandemic wasn't all bad.
So there was an anti-fracking demonstration by the dim bulbs at Dogwood, and
not just that, there was also an old-growth logging protest. Yes. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm sure they were related, but they were separate in terms of their props.
I was trying to go separately by props.
Sorry.
I thought my good friend from Langley, Blair King, basically demolished those poor anti-fracking types, pointing out that the fracking they're protesting is the kind that happens in the northeastern United States. Doesn't even happen there anymore, but not the kind that happens in British Columbia, number one. And number two, that geothermal, the great solution to many of our heating and cooling problems in British Columbia, one touted by these same dim bulbs at Dogwood. That actually involves fracking as well. So, it's not just about, it's actually not connected to LNG. It's about, extracting natural gas. That whole thing was ludicrous, and basically a stunt to raise money from American NGOs and whatnot, trying to influence Canadian energy policy. The old growth one, I did love how all of the stories about the old growth, were and they had a big stump or a slice of old growth forest, and then they would always be like, that demonstrators claimed was 1,200 years old. Okay, I guess that they claimed it. That's fine. There was no dendrochronologist on scene in order to count out the tree circles and tell us where's Mick the Twig from Time Team when I need him. That is a really obscure Amazon Prime reference, by the way. But
wow, that one went right by me. I'm not gonna lie.
If you know Mick the Twig, you know.
Okay.
Anyways, that one also seemed really silly. I mean, this old growth forest, it's 0.1% or something, like 1/10 of all the wood harvested in BC could possibly be termed old growth. And even that, that's a very gracious definition. But, I do, yeah, and also those same people are ignoring multiple requests from a wonderful Indigenous government to leave their lands, but they're still there. I don't know. NGO is going to NGO, I guess. They're going to try to raise money however they can. I think for most of us normal British Columbians, we just sort of roll our eyes and move on. Where was the giant orca in this protest? Where was that? They missed the giant orca. The oil spills could still be happening in our oceans, killing orcas, and we wouldn't even know because the giant inflatable orca wasn't there that they always trot out for these things.
I was going to say that's pretty reliably there at all these things, but no. At least I didn't see it. But again, I was watching from afar.
Right. So anyways, I'm unimpressed. I'm unmoved. I'm unmoved by that.
I'm sure you were moved and impressed by the highlight of every session, of course, is question periods. We're not going to talk at length, but it's interesting to see where the first two have gone anyway, and that was to the opioid overdose crisis, and today about the heat dome, and I think it's 570 deaths, the coroner says, were associated from that. So the subject matter was grim, but, I mean, this is exactly the kind of thing that an opposition is supposed to do, point out things that have not gone well and ask why not.
Yeah, so the opioid crisis, I thought Shirley Bond, leader of the official opposition, and former BC Polly Hot Stove Twitter Space guest, I thought she asked a very pointed but reasonable, kind of nonpartisan question, like the question that many of us would have, which is like, guys, you say you were on top of this opioid file and more people died last year than ever before. What the hell is going on here? I didn't find her question accusatory in any way. I found it, It was pointed, but it wasn't over the top. Horgan tried to answer in the same manner, got caught in his own baffle gab about various programs. She replied, and then he went political, which I thought was a bad look for a premier who has, who criticized his predecessor for having many opioid deaths on her watch. He has even more on his, and his plan isn't working clearly. I love the shout out to the Ministry of Air, which was a great Orca phrase coined for the Ministry of Mental Health. I thought Minister Malcolmson again showed that she was out of touch, not up. Just her answers were unconvincing to say the least. Not a good day yesterday for them. And, what you saw is two opposition parties who each came up with their own plan for QP, went in, happened to be on the same topic, and both reflected sort of their worldviews on this issue.
Yeah.
We talked about the BC Liberals. The BC Greens, Sonia Furstenau, got up, and her solution to everything apparently is safe supply. Let's give more heroin to addicts. And why are you shutting down a program that gave clean heroin to addicts? This is hard for a lot of British Columbians to understand how that's the path out of this, but that is her ideological view on this, safe supply. And she brought that question out. So, the NDP were actually getting hit from both flanks there, kind of the left and the right.
No, I mean, that's what question period is all about. That's why we watch it. Speaking of watching, last week you mentioned the Twitter Space. We did the show and the Twitter Space after. Sorry.
Before you jump off QP.
Yeah, let's jump.
Today they talked about the heat dome.
Yes.
Was that both parties, BC Liberal and Greens, or was that just the BC Liberals? Or
The Greens sort of used it as a bridge into their question about another subject. So no, it was a different topic they wanted to ask about. It was odd in that she used it as a frame for her question, by which I mean Sonia First now. But no, the heat dome was a BC Liberal subject today.
Okay, well, I would just like to point out, like wherever you stand politically in this province, 600
Yeah,
people died in a weekend because of the heat dome. 600 elderly, generally elderly, frail people died, often in their homes by themselves. That is unacceptable. It's tragic. It's unconscionable, and this government needs to stand up and do a full inquiry as to what failed there. And frankly, it was very clear government did not take this threat seriously. Did not open cooling centers. I worked at Metrotown. We talked about this at the time. We worked at Metrotown Mall. The ISB offices were there. Hundreds, thousands of people in Metrotown Mall sitting on the floors, drinking, dollar-day drinks from McDonald's, trying to stay cool. Rec centers were not open. Libraries were not open because of COVID. Big problem. And so absolutely government needs to take their lumps on this. But more importantly, we need like an inquiry into this or some sort of review. How do we stop this from happening again? And how do we mitigate against future heat domes and other extreme weather events to save lives? 600 people in a weekend.
Yeah. And everyone agrees these events will happen more often in the future. And you're right to point out that, yes, the government will take some lumps there, and that's why they will want to avoid this. But only the most committed partisans are most interested in lumps here. They want to figure out how to ensure this doesn't happen again. You talked about, the fact that recreation centers and that were closed because of COVID. Obviously, there needs to be some kind of protocol for when the temperature rises above a certain level, you open stuff up. Yep. You turn on the air conditioners and that kind of thing. Jody Vance wrote an interesting piece at the time about how a lot of people live in apartments that specifically prohibit air conditioning units. We need to outlaw that. that needs to be an illegal bit of code because you're literally preventing people from, buying an appliance that could save their lives. Why on earth would you do that? That kind of thing.
Yeah, building code needs to be altered to make sure that all these multifamily buildings from now on have some sort of heat, heat exchange or access to air conditioning. If you believe this is going to happen, it'll happen again. And further, we're going to head into winter. There will be an extreme cold event. There is every winter. And we need to know that shelters will be open for folks to get warm. Those who are street homeless can go somewhere. COVID or no COVID, they need to be able to get inside. Used to be in church basements, things like that. Nonprofits, obviously a little concerned about this because there's liability now, especially if COVID spreads. Government needs to be on this early. There won't be the same number of deaths generally because people in their homes can huddle and stay warm and hopefully have access to heat. But still, for street homeless, this is a pressing issue that is coming. So you can put your head in the sand and pretend it didn't happen, or you can address this head on, and that's precisely what government should do.
Yeah, and I mean there was hesitancy because of COVID, and I mean you can understand that up to a point. But I use this as an analogy. When my wife was pregnant, I almost said we were not pregnant. We took a pretty advanced first aid course for babies because we thought it was a good idea. And one particular lesson really struck me when we got into the really bad scenarios about things like choking and even heart stopping, and they start teaching you about the heart compressions and stuff like that. And they tell you quite explicitly if you hear a crunch, it doesn't mean stop. You've probably broken a rib, but more important is to get the heart beating. That reminded me of this, is that yes, if you are opening rec centers, you might have been exposing people to more COVID risk, but you would have been saving their lives in the short term. And sometimes you have to address the problem that's right in front of you and worry about one that you've sort of accidentally created to help solve it. And it sounds harsh, and yes, there is risk, but arguably people would not have died.
Yeah, certainly not 600. People would not have died. So, lots of room for improvement there. And look, we waived concerns over COVID when there were protests and other events. This was a life or death situation. This wasn't about political protest or systemic racism and other very important topics. This was literally a life or death. And for 600 people in British Columbia, it was the latter.
Yeah. The other subject I want to talk about this week is the one we talk about every week, and that's the ongoing BC Liberal leadership race. I almost said we have another entrant. That's not official, and in fact, not even known for sure. But the much discussed Aaron Gunn has been humming and hawing and had, was it an exploratory committee? And is it this Saturday? You'll correct me. It's soon. He's going to announce, well, whatever it is he's going to do.
It's Saturday, October 9th. It's somewhere in Victoria. It's expecting a fairly good-sized crowd, and you don't do that to say you're not running. So, and you don't do pre-interviews with various media outlets to say you're not running. So it's fair to say Aaron Gunn is in. Aaron Gunn, for those of you who aren't familiar with him, I knew him when he was running the Generation Screwed initiative for the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, which was a series of campus clubs across the country. Did an amazing job building up that network and really, kind of empowering and the lefties would say unleashing a new generation of conservative volunteer and activists. Since then, has gone on to build a pretty solid, pretty impressive social media platform. It does a series of videos where he explains political issues in common speak. It's done a lot around energy. That's really kind of where he built up his platform. I'm told the estimate is he has about 50,000 social media followers in British Columbia. So that will be the pool from which he fishes here. And, I think because he was involved with Canada Proud and BC Proud, Alberta Proud, which are brands that support conservative politicians. But then there was this Proud Boys things that came up, which completely separate organization. Just because you use the word proud doesn't mean you're all proud the same way, the same thing. There's been a lot of commentary that somehow Aaron is controversial or sort of might border on white supremacist. I can tell you, I've never seen that in him. I've never seen that in any of his stuff. He was pretty upset when they brought down the Sir John A. Macdonald statue in the dead of night in Victoria. Lots of people.
He had some company there.
Yeah, lots of people were, and so I think he gets a bit of a bad. Well, he does. He gets a bad rap on things like that. Not to say I couldn't vote for him or support him. Jury's out for me still on all these candidates, but that's kind of sort of out there, even though when you start to actually parse his work and statements, like it isn't that controversial. So all that to say, when this news sort of broke on the weekend, you tweeted out that this is great news for Kevin Falcon, and I vociferously disagreed. I think this is excellent news for the next leader of the BC Liberal Party, Mr. Ellis Ross.
Wow. Okay. Well, so you're going to connect those dots there. You're saying, I'm not putting words in your mouth. My interpretation of what you're saying is that Gunn's entry, assuming that he enters, is going to be a benefit to the party, but specifically to help elect Ellis Ross.
So here's what I think. I think right now I can create three candidates who have plausible routes to victory: Falcon,
Okay.
Ross, Gunn. Gunn's is the toughest of them all in that he basically has to come in and convert 20%, 25% of his social media following into $10 party memberships. We've never seen this attempted.
Yeah, and also assuming that they're not already members, or at least a significant chunk of them.
Right. So he needs to get that kind of critical mass going. Who knows if that is actually possible? We're going to find out. It'll be a fascinating thing for those of us who spend time on social media and grow followings there for brands and otherwise to see if that is actually possible. But that is a path to victory, and I'm like, okay, I can chart that out. Falcon, the path is he's the front runner. He, is well liked by, the existing membership, signs up enough members, and wins. Although he's got to battle through front runneritis, which means he can't be at 40, 41, 42% on that first ballot. He needs to be more like 46, 47, 48. Otherwise, he'll get pipped at the post like Peter MacKay did, like Diane Watts did, like whoever the hell was the front runner when Stéphane Dion won. All those different things. Yeah.
I'll remember the second we stop recording, but you're right.
Exactly. So that's the Falcon path. So for Ellis Ross, here's why I think Ellis Ross now might be in the driver's seat. I look at the new people Gunn's going to bring into the BC Liberal membership. And they're going to be people who are concerned about things like energy, like, straight talk, telling the truth, cancel culture, like things like that.
Mm-hmm.
All of which are topics that are very much within Ellis's wheelhouse. Ellis is also already familiar to Aaron's social media world. He's been a guest on several of Aaron's programs. Aaron has been very complimentary of Ellis in the past. Of all the candidates, he's the only one who's had exposure on that kind of network. So my suspicion is Gunn comes in, he doesn't sign up quite enough members, doesn't make enough conversions from social media to get to the all-important second place as the other candidates drop off the ballot.
Yeah.
And that when he drops off, a big chunk of his voters go to Ellis Ross, and that puts Ellis over the top. That's my game theory of the race right now. A lot of time to go. They could all blow it in the debates.
Yes, that's true.
Falcon could just, blow the doors off everyone.
Yeah.
That is it. But my general theory of the race right now is that Gunn's entry is much more helpful to a Ellis Ross than it is to a Kevin Falcon. And I would add, I think your point, your kind of knee-jerk reaction on Twitter the other night was that, Gunn's going to be really polarizing, and there'll be like an ABG, anyone but Gunn movement, and they'll go to the person who can most likely defeat Gunn, which would be Falcon. My point is, I don't think he will be that controversial, or as controversial as you think with the existing membership. That would be my sense.
Yeah, fair enough. No, everything you said is valid. Is it possible, I already know your answer to this, is it possible that on Saturday, Gunn is thinking ahead of your timeline, so to speak, and that he doesn't announce candidacy, he announces he's throwing his wholehearted support behind, Ellis Ross?
I'm told he has riding captains in place.
Then the answer would be no.
So I'm quite confident Aaron Gunn is running. And
okay.
I don't think he wants to scoop himself like Ellis did. Like, I think he watched Ellis, be too truthful with the media when a local reporter called and asked if he was in the race. So he's, kind of playing it coy. But no, he's got riding captains, one for every 2 ridings, is my understanding.
There you go.
He lives on Vancouver Island. He'll be an interesting.
Right here in Victoria, I think.
Yeah, he'll be an interesting force on Vancouver Island.
Would he run? Like, let's just. This is way too many steps down the road. I recognize that, but would he have the sort of? And this is the only way I'd compare them. The Annemie Paul situation, where would he run in Victoria? That's a steep uphill climb.
Well, I think everyone expects Andrew Wilkinson to step out. So, so I think that's the riding you run in first, and then after that election, you decide from there.
Yeah.
After that by-election. Look, the
Fair
bigger
enough.
problem for Aaron Gunn is, okay, let's say he pulls off a miracle. Let's say 15,000 of his social media followers sign up to be members. They, race to the online polls to vote for him. And, he wakes up, he's the leader of the BC Liberal Party. My advice to him would be, like, whatever you do during this process, do not alienate the 28 MLAs who make up the BC Liberal Party today. Like, be kind, be gentle, be courting, be deferential to them through this process, because you can't have on day one you wake up and 15 of them walk out the door because they believe some sort of myth that's created by you, or they're put off by an arrogant comment or something like that. So that would be the tricky part of it. I would say though that if MLAs generally, if they see the memberships going one way, they're sort of beholden to the membership as far as their own nominations go. So, there's always talk before a leadership race that, I'll bail if that person gets elected, and then, they hang around after.
Yeah, I mean, and that rarely actually does happen, right? I mean,
Christie's a great example.
I was going to say, there was a lot of people that said that behind the scenes about Christy Clark, and, only one or two of them didn't run again, which is fine. Mm-hmm. But that's a very different thing to do than walking. Yeah. That's a very different thing. And the only one I can think of who actually stepped down was John Van Dongen, and that that didn't work out too well for him.
Yeah, that worked out great. No, I remember Christy Clark.
I made that sound ominous. I just mean he got absolutely trounced in the subsequent election. I realize I made that sound ominous. I didn't mean to, but in terms of his political career, it was, the end of it, really.
It was curtains, yeah. No, Clark won, I think, on a Thursday or a Friday. And then a day or two later, Mary Polak had a big fundraiser in Langley. Obviously, Polak, most of Langley had been for Falcon. Christie showed up, mended fences with, Mary basically on the spot and charmed the crowd. Like, it was great. And, so, things can heal up pretty quickly.
Yeah,
But
fair enough.
you don't want to, like, poke them in the eye unnecessarily on the way in.
I mean, it's true at the best of times, even.
I mean, look, if you're Aaron Gunn, that's a good problem to have because it means you won, right? But
yeah, no, exactly.
And I do think that is unlikely. Like I said, if I were going to put some money down on this in Vegas, which I can't understand why Vegas would do BC political betting, but if they did, maybe the BC Lottery Corp should play now. Let me know. I would put.
Wait, you can actually bet on this in Vegas for real?
No, I don't think so. Can you?
Oh, okay. I was like, oh my god. Like, well, you can bet on anything probably, but that would be something.
I would go with Ellis if I were told to put $50 down on someone.
Fascinating. Yeah, it's so early. I want to see at least one more debate. And you're quite right. These are the hardest things to call because so much of it depends on who's second on everyone's ballots, right? So, like, it's right now, you're right. We saw in the debate that Falcon is perceived by the other camps, which is what matters, as the clear front runner. But that doesn't necessarily mean there's an absolutely guaranteed path to winning. I think you're right to say you'd have to win on the first couple ballots, or at least that'd be the easiest path. Yeah. And you're also right about Aaron Gunn being if nothing else, a fascinating experiment about, the potential of converting a social media following into a political following. So we'll see. And also assuming that there isn't already a significant chunk of overlap. I mean, it assumes that someone following and a fan of him is on social media isn't already a paid member and already supporting Ellis Ross or Michael Lee or whoever else. Right. I'm sure there is a lot of untapped audience there, but I'm sure the crossover is not zero. Yeah.
Gunn will make the debates much more interesting. So that will be interesting to see because he'll be fearless and has no connection to the, pre-existing party. And then second of all, one thing that Gunn is underrated, like you build a social media following two ways. Either you spend a bunch of money, buying clicks. He didn't do it that way. He put out interesting content, almost all on video. And at a time where BC Liberal members, I think, are very shy about talking about their party affiliation, feel beat down, feel like anytime they poke their head up above, they're getting kicked, stomped on. I think it might be very refreshing to have an Aaron Gunn out there saying, no, stand up for your principles. Let's be proud of them. You're not wrong. We're going to do this. Like, there is some interesting, like, I think his social media and video content will be better than, obviously, the other campaigns, simply because he's more experienced at it. And I am curious whether that sense of courage might inspire folks as well. Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, as I say, a fascinating experiment. That's kind of all I had for this week, unless you've got something more to throw into the stove here, as it were.
Should we talk about how we spent Truth and Reconciliation Day if we were Prime Minister?
Well, I would have liked very much to go to Tofino. I haven't been there in some time. We talked about this on Political Capital. I'm just amazed that he did it. The people around him are not stupid. This is a holiday that people are comparing it to, spending it on the beach for Remembrance Day. In some ways, this is worse. Mm-hmm. This is the first Remembrance Day, so to speak. It's a holiday that he declared. And to be in the same province as, the First Nation where the first unmarked graves were discovered near Kamloops, they had invited him there several times and just get past them and go to Tofino, literally on a beach. And all the while, his itinerary saying the opposite. So, I mean, there's I'm trying not to use the L word. There is a mistruth. There is some deception here, which is, it's not even disappointment. It's bewilderment that they thought this would be okay. And, sure the people who are defending it, I understand partisan politics, but oh my God, this was not excusable.
Do you think the staff actually knew? Because his spokesman was like, no, he's, first of all, the itinerary was like, no, he's at home. And then, no, he's making calls. Now, first of all, we haven't seen a single Indigenous person in this country come out and say, I had a really touching phone call with Justin Trudeau on National Truth and Reconciliation Day. So I'm going to call bullshit on that too until I see someone actual proof. He called me. That just is too. And then, his spokesperson's like, well, he's not like he's on a beach somewhere. As, Global
Literally on a
BC,
beach.
God bless them. And let's just say a shout out to Global BC. I'm not sure how it happened, and maybe Jody or George, who do some work for the company that owns Global, maybe they could tell me, but my gut says they saw the plane going to Tofino and they flew a camera crew up there because you don't have a Global camera crew in Tofino.
No, I mean, they might have drove someone in from Nanaimo or something like that. But yeah, no, it's...
In which case, well done, Global.
Yeah.
Outstanding. That was the clip of the fall. I was going to say the clip of the century, but probably not the clip of the century. But anyways, it was entertaining to me. And what I think pisses people off about it is, take businesses that were working that day. ICBA was open because the vast majority of our members were open because it's not a statutory holiday in British Columbia. We spent a lot of time before and during the day thinking about, how do we talk to our staff about this? Mm-hmm. What can we add to the conversation, to the healing? Is there something we can do for specific, charities that are doing this work, not one day a year, but 365 days a year? Can we, how do we renew our commitment to Indigenous young people who want to enter the trades, which is obviously what our organizers do? We spent a lot of time. We wordsmithed, I wrote, kind of a piece about it for our staff. And, Chris and I went through it very carefully over and over again, trying to make sure it was right, showing lessons we've learned, openness to hear more, all that stuff. And this dummy who declares this holiday gets on a plane and flies to Tofino and stays in an $18 million mansion and is out there on the beach, while the folks in Kamloops have thousands of people and are grieving and trying to heal. I think that's what bothered a lot of a lot of us normal people. It's we put a lot of time and effort and thought into this, and this guy just took off and used RCMP to kind of head off media on a beach.
And you couldn't have waited one more day? You couldn't have gone surfing on Friday? I just hole up in a hotel if you absolutely refuse to go to any of the ceremonies. Just at least ensure nobody sees you. It's so baffling. I mean, like you, I put a lot of thought into how I was going to spend the day. Now, it was a holiday for schools, so I had my son home with me, and we did sit down and talk about it, and over breakfast, and he asked a lot of good questions, and I tried my best to answer them. And then it's a whole day, and so later that day in the afternoon, he was asking, can we go to a playground? And I was kind of like, I don't know if that would be appropriate today. And I know that there are other public figures who were, and I'm not a public figure, I just mean people out there, were worried about things like that. I mean, if you go to a ceremony in the morning, does that mean you're okay to go for lunch? And what happens if the camera comes up to you and you've got your kid at the playground saying, what are you doing here on National Truth and Reconciliation Day? Yeah. And it doesn't matter how many times you say, well, he did this thing in the morning and there's more to do in this afternoon, but he's 6. To have those thoughts and seriously wonder in real time, is it okay to take my kid to the playground today? And then find out the Prime Minister was surfing is just, it's frustrating.
It's ridiculous. Well, I mean, someone texted me a photo of Andrew Mercier, the forgettable MLA for Langley. And he's wearing an orange shirt. He tweeted us out this picture, wearing an orange shirt, and he's grinning like a Cheshire cat. Oh, I don't think he should be grinning. And he's smiling. He's looking too happy on National Truth and Reconciliation Day. And you're like, okay, so if we're if people are micromanaging to that degree, someone who's wearing an orange shirt, clearly supporting the movement, and probably attended an event, I don't know if he did or not, but I would assume so. What the Prime Minister then did was just completely over the top. And I'd just like to say, shame on you blind partisans for accepting this Prime Minister's behavior like this. You empower this kind of foolish, stupid, insensitive, unbecoming behavior. You did it with blackface. You're doing it now on National Truth and Reconciliation Day. You did it when they fired JWR and Jane Philpott. Shame on you. You're empowering this guy. The rest of us want to hold him to account. And even if you want to vote for him, that's fine. Vote for him, whatever. That's your business. But hold him to account for these kind of obvious, blatant, tone-deaf, destructive traits. show some courage and like hold the guy responsible.
Yeah, there's no contradiction in saying I'm still going to vote for them because I like their ideas, but this was stupid. that's a very regular, real person reaction to have. It's not abnormal. It's not a failing. And I'd like to see more of that on Twitter and Facebook when it's working.
That's all I have. I didn't want to let that go by though, because I thought,
yeah,
you just think of all the effort that went into it.
Yeah.
And I wonder what it means going forward. Like, so the foundation one of the foundations that iSpace supported was the Downey and Wenjack Fund. And essentially it was created by the families of a survivor or of someone who died at a residential school in the 60s and Gord Downey's family. They joined together and they're trying to model truth and reconciliation every day. And they're trying to do something, as Gord Downey challenged the country to do on this. And so we made a donation to them. But I wonder, right, like, what does it mean when a prime minister declares a holiday as recommended by the Truth and Reconciliation Report and then treats it with such disrespect? Like, how are we ever going to get
treats
forward?
it like a holiday.
Yeah.
But
how are we ever going to get forward? And I forget who tweeted out, but whoever tweeted out, like, if this had happened during the election, Trudeau would have been at the ceremony on a knee, like he has before. Like, this is what frustrates me. It's not like he's ideologically opposed to this. He's done the stuff before. He was at an event the night before. Like, just one more day. I don't know. I don't know how people deal with it. Like, it would drive his staff.
I had one conversation with somebody who said, "Well, where was Aaron O'Toole?" And I said, well, actually, I'm pretty sure I saw photos of him on Parliament Hill. But, I mean, I don't know what he was doing, but I think he was there. That's what I saw. Well, he was just trying to make it all about himself. I'm like, at this point, and I'm not the world's biggest Aaron O'Toole fan, as casual listeners will know. But it's just facts matter. He was there. You can still not like him. That's okay. I'm sure Jagmeet Singh was doing something appropriate as well. I have no doubt of that. It's just, it's ridiculous.
It's bananas to me that people think this way. Like, it's okay to hold them to account even if you support them. In fact, it would be better. It would be better. So last night, Mira Orrick, former, I don't know, she did policy stakeholding something for the premier. She tweets out a complaint because her kid waited 2.5 hours to get a COVID test.
Yeah.
And so I tweeted back, like, quoting it like, you should pick up the phone and call the Premier's office about it. Like, here's a person who actually does have the Premier's phone number. And as soon as I said it, I'm like, that was snarkier than I meant it to be. Like, I didn't mean it snarky. I meant it more like, you should call. Like, so I immediately tweeted again at her, like, that came out snarkier than I meant. What I meant is, you obviously have a, please, talk to your friends in power about this, because 2.5 hours for a COVID test for kids who are sick is ludicrous, especially when the rest of the world is selling COVID tests at drugstores for dollars, like just a couple bucks.
That's true.
And only Dr. Bonnie seems to be the one allergic to allowing us to do these tests here in BC. And Mira, she doesn't like me anyways. That's fine. I don't particularly like her politics, but she's like, you're right, that was a snarky tweet, but I'm speaking as a mother, not as a. Well, look, she can make change or she can't. The bottom line is, there's a person who clearly is clearly signaling to her friends in power, like, we got to do better on this. Yeah. And, so you got to respect that at least, whether she picks up the phone or not and calls. I know that Dix follows her tweets, so, at least it's something, right? Like, but she's
acknowledging that something could be better, rather than saying, isn't it great to live in BC where we only have to wait 2.5 hours?
Exactly.
Which I'm sure someone else would have done.
Oh, for sure. So the blind faith in Trudeau just baffles me. It baffles most conservatives, but on this kind of thing where it's such an obvious, like, your praise of Trudeau would mean more to me if I thought you were actually holding him to account when he does stupid stuff like this.
Yeah, it means more when you praise the things that go well. It means more if you're also, at the very least, quiet when things are bad, or able to say, well, at the very least, I wouldn't have done that. I don't approve of this. Yeah. I like 75% of what they do, but this 25% is not that great. Again, a very human and normal stance to have on a lot of things.
Yeah, exactly. All right, there you go.
All right, this is a new record for us. I think that's like 15 minutes after I said I think that's it for this week. So For those of you still with us, he's Jordan Bateman. I'm McLean Kay. Happy politics.